Hey everyone and welcome to Storytime. My name is Jake and today we are going to be looking at the subreddit r/maliciouscompliance, where people conform to the letter but not the spirit of a request. If you're new around here, please do hit subscribe down below so that you never miss out on another video. But for now, let's sit back, relax, and enjoy some malicious compliance. If boss threatens firing staff for playing MMbop for an approved company CD list, I'll get you demoted. I worked one summer at a canoe rental company located in a large provincial park. The place employed about 60 people, aged 16 to 23 on average, with a few management who were older. One of the rules at the place was the only acceptable music that could be played on the speaker system was from a specific list of approved albums that were in a book filled with CDs. One of my jobs was to open up the shop in the morning. This meant that I started about 15 minutes before everyone else. My usual routine would be get everything unlocked, the tills in place, move a few canoes that were for first thing rental that morning, and then at exactly 0700 hours, press play on the CD player. I would go and get my morning coffee, eat breakfast, and go watch the world go by for 15 minutes before going back to work. Usually, the person who started at 0700 hours in the shack would be the one responsible to pick and start the music. However, as I was really efficient, I would be able to get my morning duties done, press play, and be long gone from the vicinity before what song I had picked was apparent to people listening. For the first few days, I chose nice, classic upbeat music to get everyone going. Beatles, Led Zeppelin, maybe some CCR, etc. I really enjoyed sipping my coffee and watching all the kids starting work, bobbing their heads to the music as they flipped canoes, cleaned off the tables, etc. The assistant manager was one of those my way or the highway individuals. If you got on his bad side, he would give you the worst jobs, belittle you in public, and essentially just be a douche. We'll call him Assistant Richard. One afternoon, one of the younger women working at the shack puts on a CD from the book by Hanson called MMbop. Everyone in the area who can hear the speakers starts bobbing their head to the music and starts singing along to the chorus. All in all, everyone seems to be enjoying the song. Everyone except Assistant Richard. Right when the chorus drops, he comes running out of the office and starts to yell very loud at the women working at the shack. I won't quote him verbatim, but essentially, he told her, "Bleep bleep, stupid, bleep bleep, if you or anyone plays this song again, you will be fired." He makes her take off her uniform and leave work for the day. I overhear parts of this discourse and approach Assistant Richard and ask why he reacted the way he did, and that the CD she chose was approved in the binder, so what's the issue? You can't fire or threaten someone's job if they are following the rules. His response was something along the lines of, that the song would make the company look bad and shouldn't be played. He refused to apologize to the woman when I told him he was out of line, and his response was to threaten my job as well. Next morning, at 0700 hours, and every morning I worked thereafter, guess what song I chose to play at full volume? Remember, by the time the chorus drops, I'm long gone from the shack, so whoever was unfortunately closest to the radio at that moment would get yelled at and threatened, etc. I had made several extra copies of the CD, so every day Assistant Richard would throw out the Hanson CD, and the next day it would get played again. I made a point to talk with anyone who got yelled at afterwards and explain their legal rights to them, and that I had witnessed how out of line Assistant Richard had been. No one got fired or officially disciplined despite Assistant Richard's attempts. This went on for about a month until the owner got in early one day and observed the whole process, especially how Assistant Richard talked to the staff. The album was on the approved list, so it was a totally acceptable choice. Assistant Richard was demoted and was not hired back the next year. I, of course, played that song daily the rest of the season whenever, when, now just called Richard, was also working. It gives me a little skip to my step when I hear that song and picture his scowling face storming across a dock, with the sun rising over the horizon and birds chirping in the background. Beautiful. Just fight it out? Sure. This is the story of a very bad teacher I had in college. His class was 99% group project, but whenever there was a conflict, he would just tell the students to fight it out. No constructive criticism, feedback, mediation, or anything. Whenever there was a conflict, his only advice was, "When I had to work with a colleague 20 years ago and we hated each other's guts, we eventually fought with our fists like men, and have been friends ever since. Maybe you should try that." Now, keep in mind that this class was 60% girls with nice long sharp nails, so you don't really want to fight. Anyway, one day, me, a girl, and one of the girls in my group had a fight because we both felt like the other didn't do anything in the project. She was supposed to send me her work so I could put everything together, but it was already late and filled with typos, grammatical errors, and some sentences didn't even make sense. Even though we agreed at the start of the project that my only job would be to put everything together, fact check everything, correct every single mistake, and make it look nice, she felt like I should be gathering info too. So, obviously, two sides to this story. We really needed someone independent to find out who was right, and the rest of the group hated conflict, so they just stayed out of it. We went to the teacher and got his usual story of his fight. We were a bit angry that a teacher would tell two 18-year-old girls to just fight with our fists instead of help us work through our issues. When we told the group what his advice was, they found it very weird too. The malicious compliance. The next day, we got to school and had put makeup on to make it look like we had black eyes, bruises, etc. A few scratches here and there too. The administrator, who greets you when you enter the building, was shocked when she saw us and asked what happened. We told her, "The teacher told us to fight instead of talk out our problems, so we did." When we walked away, he heard her starting to call the dean, I imagine to talk about what she just saw. The teacher sadly happened to be away that day for some lecture, so he didn't get to see our injuries. He did get a stern talking to and was later sent on a mandatory course on how to give constructive feedback and how to teach your students to do so. I know because he complained about that course for the rest of the year. Edit. Forgot to mention that our fight continued afterwards, with zero guidance and things getting uglier by the day. There was no hope of ever working it out. What would that be classed as? Because it's not really exactly following malicious compliance. It's kind of sidestepping and going the same route but through a hidden way. When HR takes a dislike to you. Some years ago, I worked for a company that made parts for cars. We mostly made parts for the aftermarket, but we also had a few OEM customers. I had ended up controlling some of the machines that mostly did parts for the original equipment manufacturer customers. It had reached the point where, due to the laziness of my immediate supervisor, I made sure the work was done in order of priority, monitored and requested orders for machine consumables, requested parts from other departments so orders could be finished, and the salesperson responsible for the customer would come directly to me if he needed something in a hurry. Basically, I was doing my job and the parts of my supervisor's job that related to me. I didn't mind doing this, even though I wasn't being paid to do half of it, as it pretty much let me do my own thing without some idiot, my supervisor, getting in the way. Our main OEM customer had to redesign all the parts we made to comply with the new regulations that had come in, and so, along with our development department, we proceeded to make and supply sample parts to customer specs for them to test and approve. This was a slow process that could take months of back and forth before they settled on a final product. This had been going on for many months, where my time was split between developing the new parts and making sure existing orders were completed on time. Up until this point, HR was covered by someone that also had other roles in the company. For whatever reason, they decided it was time to get someone specifically for the role and employed someone from outside the company for the position. After HR had started, the company decided to look the way people were paid. Up until this point, everyone in a production role was paid the same no matter their ability. So, machine operators were paid the same as someone that was a settler/operator, my official job title. They decided some of the more capable people would get a pay rise and be given a new job title of machine setter. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. I was one of those people. One of the things I had a habit of doing was if I was in the middle of doing something, say setting up for a part, I would finish that before going for my break, which meant I didn't always have my break at the allotted, with the rest of my department. Nobody had previously had a problem with this, but for some reason, HR didn't like it. It was raised in a meeting by HR that I did this. They were basically told to keep their nose out as I was getting the work through, and that was all that mattered. They didn't like this, but were overruled, so couldn't do anything about it. A few weeks later, after all this happened, it was coming up to a bank holiday weekend, and they were looking for people to work on the bank holiday Monday. They weren't offering anything in the way of incentive beyond normal OT rates, and so I said no thanks. Admittedly, I would have refused even if they had offered double or triple time. On the Friday, I was called into the office by my supervisor and HR because of refusing to work the bank holiday. HR accused me of being selfish and of letting the team down by refusing to work. HR pointed out how other people did more overtime than me and were still willing to come in on the Monday. To that, I basically said, good for them, and I still wouldn't be doing it. This was when HR smugly brought up the fact that I had recently been given a pay rise and I was risking that by refusing. They had given the pay rise in the form of a bonus instead of on the hourly rate, so it would be easy for them to stop paying it. My response to this was to tell them they could take the bonus if they wanted, and in return, I would only set and operate the one machine and do none of the extra work I had been doing. Thinking they were being clever, they said fine, that's what I could do if I was still unwilling to work the Monday. My supervisor didn't look happy in the slightest at this decision. So, that is exactly what I was going to do. I went and informed those that needed to know the situation, and that if they needed anything, they were to see either one of the other setters or the supervisor. So, after enjoying my bank holiday weekend, I went in on the Tuesday morning and proceeded to set my plan in action. I went on a work to rule policy. I did only the bare minimum of what was required of me. Anyone that requested anything outside my pay grade were potentially informed to see one of the setters or the supervisor. One of the key factors in my plan was that the machine that did the vast majority of the work for the OEM customers wasn't the only one I was running. This was also the machine that 90% of the redesigns were being done on. After about 6 relaxing days, the production manager came to see me. He took me for a walk outside and asked me to go back to what I was doing before. The extra money I wasn't being paid would be backdated. He also said HR had been ordered that if anything came up in regards to me, it had to be run by him first. I later found out that the production manager had just come from a meeting where both the heads of sales and development had raised the issue to the company director. After ripping HR a new one, he told the production manager to get it sorted. I never had a run-in with HR again after that. Apart from a few dirty looks, they completely avoided me to the point where they would go out of their way to avoid having to interact with me. They lasted for less than 6 months before being replaced. I know it wasn't mentioned in that, but I always feel like, the new people that get put into jobs in middle management or whatever are people that just straight come out of university, have no experience in business whatsoever, and think just because they've got a degree, they know exactly how every business runs. And it's just like, nah, you're above over your head, mate. Hey everyone, I hope you all had a really good day and that you enjoyed that video. If you want to check out some other videos, then click on screen right now, or check out the playlist down below. If you enjoyed that video, then please do leave a like. And if you want to submit your own stories, then you can do so by joining the Discord in the top link in the description. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you very soon.